You are now live on YouTube.
Alhamdulillah. Brothers and sisters and brothers, dear believers and company, thank you for joining MAP5, Muslim American Power 5. Today we're blessed to be on September the 8th, 2025, and we welcome you to our program dedicated to civic engagement and, of course, civic education, co-hosted by Sister Amatullah Alaji-Sabrie and the Honorable Cheryl Sudduth and myself, Brother Fleming El-Amin. And our prayers that we can bring to you each week a program that you can gain something from, that you can learn something from, that you can actually do something with in your course of the week as you engage in civic responsibilities and civic duties in your communities. We usually start off our program with an icebreaker. Since our co-hosts have not joined us just yet, I will start off with the prayer, of course, which is also part of our tradition. We'll recite the prayer in Arabic, and then we'll translate it, of course, in English. And we pray that we have listening ears and sincere hearts as we open up this occasion of MAP5 2025 on September the 8th, 2025. If you join me in prayer, the prayer goes like this. It's the first chapter in the Holy Quran. For those that are the Islamic faith that you'll be very familiar with, it's repeated quite often by about 1 billion people in the world who identify with this religion. It's called Al-Fatiha, or the opening chapter. And we always ask Allah to remove from us any influence of Satan in our lives as we pray to him for guidance in our lives. This is the way the prayer traditionally goes. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Amen. In English translation, according to Yusuf Abdul Ali's translation, we seek refuge in Almighty God from the influence of Satan in our lives. With the name of Almighty God, most gracious, most merciful, all praises due to God and God alone, most gracious, most merciful Master of the day of judgment. Thee do we worship, and thy aid we seek. Subhanallah. Subhanallah, subhanallah. Pardon me, brothers and sisters, for forgetting for a moment the English translation. And we seek that from thy mercy and grace, and not of those who go astray, nor of those who incur their wrath. I apologize, brothers and sisters. I mean, I hope Allah receives my intent and not my mistakes in opening up the prayer with Al-Fatiha. But again, thank you for joining us today. We pray that we'll have a program that will engage you this afternoon. On the East Coast is 1 o'clock, of course. On the West Coast, it's just 10 a.m. because the sun does I think, rest in the West, but it rises from the East. And one of my colleagues, we always kid each other about that. But we have prepared today about 4 guests that have been invited to the program. I asked them to call in about 1:30 because we usually use the first 30 minutes to discuss current events and also have an icebreaker. And our distinguished guest, Honorable Cheryl Sudduth, usually leads this part of our program. She's going to be about 10 minutes behind today, so I'll start it off for us. And feel free to raise your hands. We'll identify you if you'd like to participate also in the icebreaker. And we have 2 questions for you today. We know that today.
I'm here.
Oh, assalamu alaikum. She's here. She's here. Alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah.
But you can go ahead. But you can go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to share with you to say that we want to hear from the things in your life that you're very grateful for today. You know, that has you sort of smiling from your heart. That's eventually, you know, shows on your face. Name one thing exactly that you're very grateful for today. That's the first thought of it. And then, of course, the other side of that coin is that what is one thing you're really, really concerned about? You have an ability to change. Let me say it again. What is one thing you're concerned about that you have the ability to change that you feel that you need to have some participation in? So one thing that has your heart lifted, the other, what are you concerned about that you need to have some impact on changing it that really has your heart truly concerned about it, and its effect on your community life today. So we'll start off with what's one thing that you're grateful for today that really has your heart smiling, and it's to say from ear to ear, some kind of complacency on what's happening in your life today from your perspective. And we'll open it up. Sister Cheryl, you want to start it off for us? You're always so very reflective and thought-provoking in your comments in this regard.
Yeah, you know, um, I think that one of I think the gift of life.
Mm.
I think that watching what is occurring in the world has been, as I listened to you with the prayer, it has it has been it was hard to not be reflective about the gift of life. And
Mm.
so I was thinking as you were reciting Al-Fatiha, I was thinking about I spent the weekend with friends. A friend was celebrating her birthday, 50 few is what we call it. Uh,
Mm.
she was joining our 52 club, and I say, don't say that, call it 50 few. And she said, I like this. I like this. I said, this is what I call it, right? And I say, so when I say the prayer, because we're a mix of Muslim and I'm the Muslim one and they're Christian. So I give this other prayer that says, God, I come before you with this heart full of gratitude. And I thank you for this gift of life and the strength you give me each day. And I thank you for my family and my friends and the blessings you provided. And may I always remember this goodness and I share the love that I have with others. And, this gift of life is a treasure, but the ability to have this very humble view of humanity is what I'm grateful for. And to have this grateful heart, to be kind, even when we want to be, to be, um, to not be kind.
Mm. Mm.
I think that that's what I'm grateful for, to be mindful that there are times when we don't want to be kind, but we do it anyway.
Mm. Mm. It's
So
so insightful as always. You know, my first reaction also relates to a social event that occurred this weekend with similar thought patterns today. But I went to my wife's celebration of her class, high school class picnic. And I hope she doesn't mind me saying this, but she graduated in 1969. So it's a class of 69 a picnic they do about once a quarter. So all the people who graduated from our high school in '69 came, of course. Wonderful food, wonderful conversations, just appreciation for having the energy and the time and the focus to come together without coming to a funeral or as we call janaza, but to come together and celebrate each other, just being there. And my wife serves as president of the class, and so she has certain duties she had to fulfill. And one of the sisters she called upon said, you know, we don't realize the blessing we have just to want to be together from 1969 to 2025. And look around the group. All of us are, quote, 70 plus years young. All of us in pretty good health, with some exceptions, but we're here, regardless of our struggle. So let's just celebrate life. Have another piece of fried fish, some of that chicken over there, some baked beans. Get your cold drink, water if you prefer, and a piece of that chocolate cake. So I said, I will follow my instructions specifically, but I'm going to the cake first. My wife said, don't you dare, because I have some issues with that. I have a sweet tooth that I have to control. But just the idea of being together, and I was joking with one of the young ladies sitting in front of us that my wife has known since high school. So I said, you know what? We're still together since 1969. I met my wife in 1969 in high school. Sidebar. And I was in the 11th grade. She was in the 12th. And we started, getting to know each other. She was involved with another young man who was going to college, North Carolina State, in fact. And he couldn't come to be with her as her escort at a thing they called the Civic Ball. So I was a substitute date to be with her, to escort her to this event called the Civic, which is like a little ball that one of the sororities has for young people. And so I showed up, he didn't. And, that's his life. But the idea was that we came together, and one of the guys said, you know what? We've been together longer than a lot of our marriages have survived since 1969, because you're talking about, 50 plus years later. But just to be in the midst of people just celebrating life was so fulfilling. My two daughters came in. My oldest daughter is a professor at Duke University. She brought her one of my grandchildren with her, and then my other younger daughter, who's finishing her PhD at North Carolina State University in engineering, brought two of her daughters. So we had two of my daughters and three of my grands. And that's always uplifting in the house. And I always enjoy cooking when they're here. Now, when they're not here, that's a whole different game. But they expect grandpa in the kitchen, and I do show up for them. So that's what I'm grateful for this weekend, by the grace of Allah, to have that kind of celebration of family and friends. Just those little things in life can make all the difference in life if you appreciate it, inshallah.
Yeah.
So we'll invite those that might be on the air. I know I've invited 4 people. I hope they will show up for us. If you feel like sharing what has you spirits uplifted, that you're grateful for, feel free to join the conversation. And then we'll go to the other side of the coin very shortly. That is, what are you really concerned about also? That you have some other capacity to change within your means as you see it. If I don't see any hands, we're going to go back to our sister and let her comment on what has her concerned. Let's see. Do I have this shared? Do you see anything on your screen, Sister Cheryl? Any hands raised?
Oh, yeah, Sister Amatullah first. And yeah, Sister Manaira just came off of mute.
Okay. I think Sister Amatullah wanted to do her through the chat, I
No,
believe, today.
Sister Manaira has her hand up.
Okay, alhamdulillah. All right, Sister Manara, please join the
Yeah.
conversation. What are you grateful for this morning?
I'm grateful for those that toe the line, for those that toe the line and stand up for others when they can't stand up, or work and the capacity to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. I'm grateful for all those who just toe the line and do that work and do that lifting because they can. I think we'd be in a much worse place without those that just toe the line, because it's the right thing to do. So I'm very appreciative of those in that capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Sister Amatullah, you have your hand raised? Sister Amatullah also had a hand raised? Or,
Which Amatullah?
You?
you.
Oh,
Oh, well, we're in sync today, Sister Cheryl. All right.
I didn't have I didn't have my hand raised, but first I'll give the greetings to everybody. But I did enjoy an event I went to on Friday, which was Imam W.D. Muhammad Day in Hazel Crest, Illinois, which is right outside of Chicago, where Imam was a resident during the final years of his life here. So it was outside, and it was consist of the prayer, the Jum'ah prayer together.
Mhm.
And then we had a little break. We socialized a bit, and um, we ate, and then we reconvened for a program with the mayor and the chief of police and fire persons from Hazel Crest, and then members from our community and family, and so on. So it was very good. I guess by it being though on a weekday and especially right after the convention days, I think that would have put a strain on some people to try to participate in that too. But I was able to go, alhamdulillah. And with being encouraged by Imam's daughter, Layla, who sent me a text message and invited me. I'm like, okay, this sounds like a special invitation. I'll hit the road again after all this traveling. So it was very uplifting though, and a nice turnout, especially for I say, for it being the time that it was.
Yes, ma'am. Were you asked to participate? Did you make comments yourself at the event?
No, I
No.
did not. I wasn't asked to participate. They had a program already
Okay.
planned, and yes, the guests were Muhammad Ali's granddaughter. I mean, Muhammad Ali's daughter, his oldest
Ah,
daughter, Mariam
okay.
Maymay,
Yes.
and Imam Muhammad's oldest daughter, Layla. And then they
Mhm.
had members from well, the Focolari had a representative,
Okay.
and then
Okay.
and Imam, two of the younger imams. Well, I say younger, they're getting on up there now too, but the younger imams from the Chicago area,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, Brother Tariq, and the other name is slipping my mind right this moment, but
Okay.
yeah,
Alhamdulillah.
that's
But
over,
for those that are
behind.
listening,
Yeah.
that may not know what the Focolare represents, do you mind commenting on who are the Focolare? What do they represent as a group, if you don't
Well,
mind?
the Focolari is a Christian uh, group that Imam Muhammad uh, and our community form a friendship with from the previous person that was in charge, Kiara Lubick, and Imam and Sister Kiara made a pact that they would remain supportive of each other, their communities, and so on, and we would share things with them and appreciate their love and their brotherhood and sisterhood. And so that's been going on now since I don't have the exact date, but I think it was the late 90s that
Yes.
this was formed. And I know we did several events together, and there are currently events on a yearly basis, several times a year, between members of Imam Muhammad's community and also the Focolari. And I guess I have to give credit to Brother Imam Mikhail Sahir from Indiana. I know he's quite active in keeping that relationship. They do something also. So it's just a very brotherly, sisterly people that respect each other's religion, respect each other's work that they do, respect each other's love that that's shown for fellow human beings. So it's just been a beautiful friendship that was forged by our leader, Imam W. Muhammad, and we've tried to carry that out, individual members and communities.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, this most recent book that was published entitled The Pact. You see Imam Muhammad and Sister Cheryl a little bit together. I was fortunate enough to be in New York City when she made a presentation at the masjid there in Harlem, and they shared the program reports together. And Imam Muhammad sort of kidded. He said, "We can learn a lot about love if we study the vocabulary and how to treat each other better." Just a sidebar to your comments, but thank you very much, Sister Rani. Okay. Now, the other side of the question was, what's a concern you have that you somewhat have the capacity to make a change in that's somewhat disturbing your heart today? I guess I kicked off the program, so I guess perhaps I should start with my concern. I noticed in the paper this morning that the Court of Appeals did not reverse the decision made for the young lady who had sued our current president for an $8 million, I think, award that she received from suing him on, of course, what he usually engaged in, sexual harassment, etc. And he tried to say that indeed the Supreme Court had covered that for him. The Court of Appeals said no. He still is indebted to her for $8 million from the initial lawsuit. And of course, I'm sure he will go back to the Supreme Court, but at least on the appellate level, that decision is being maintained. And so I was just thankful and grateful that they came out that way. And I'm saying that because we had a serious case here in North Carolina where a young lady was accosted in the Charlotte area on the bus stop. Scarf was pulled off of her head. She was actually hit by a young man who was an athlete at the high school. And the school system did not respond like we thought they should respond. So a group of us, of course, went to make the appeal to say they should be charged with a terrorist attack, etc., and it should be taken seriously and not just sort of pushed under the rug. And we really had to go to the school board and make some appeals also beyond the school board to the State Board of Education to get this young lady some assistance she needed because of the way she was assaulted, basically. And so that case is still going forward, and we are engaged with our own hands to make sure she receives justice in this case, because there should be no tolerance for that at all on any level. This happened to be a young Muslim sister assaulted like that and accosted like. And I'll put a sidebar to this. There was a time in my earlier life as an FOI that had someone even tried something like that. The brothers in the group would sort of walk the person, to the right location and teach them a little lesson about putting his hands on sisters. But that was another life. Sometimes it's still needed today, though. But that is something that sort of disturbed my soul a little bit. And of course, when you can do something about situations like that, you should act on it. I was in a discussion yesterday with some brothers that said, we have to remember that Allah's given us a beautiful religion, but 4 parts of that religion is action. The first part is a declaration of faith, but everything after that requires action on your part, whether it's prayer, whether it's zakat, whether it's a pilgrimage, whether it's, making hajj, it all requires action. So you just can't say you believe and that'd be enough. You got to take some action in your life to demonstrate that. That's on a smaller scale. But that was my concern, very heavily on my heart, inshallah. And I hope that we can do all we can to make humanity more civil. We have that duty to represent that based on our faith principles, inshallah. All right, who'd like to go next? The teacher will call you if you don't volunteer.
Miss Minerva came off of mute. There she is.
Oh, that's it. All right.
Yes, what can I do? I want to spend time encouraging people to vote in leadership that has moral strength, moral courage, moral backbone,
Mm.
and a history of moral facilitating moral um, principles in our society so we can attempt to take our country back before it goes too far.
Mm.
uh,
Mm.
oh, it's looking for the moral fiber and the humanity in our leadership. We have to have moral leadership. Corrupt leadership will lead us astray. We have to have moral leadership. So that's the area where I can, and all of us can make a change.
That's fine.
Mhm.
All right.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, yes. All right. Our Sister Ronnie.
I am not good at all with these with these quick responses because I'm a very slow deliberate thinker. So um I do want to say that what the sister just said, that Imam's daughter, Layla, had said that that was one of the, I think she said that that was one of the last things that he had said, to her in conversations before he had transitioned in 2008, had talked about the value of high morals. You're making decisions based upon your moral standing. And I'm sorry I don't have the exact words, but she definitely said that the morals were, that's something that's really at the top, um, thinking and action where we are concerned, where we as believers are concerned. So I just wanted to second that. I know I didn't answer your question, but that's because when she said that, then she started me thinking about that. I'm like, wow, Sister Layla just said that. So I was just smiling and not thinking about the answer to the question. But
Well, you
seconding,
answered it. You answered. You answered it. You second the motion, the first presented there. That's an answer in itself. So thank you very much, Sister
I
Amatullah.
do, yes, I am keeping my eyes open for wherever I can participate, where some of the younger people are concerned, whether that would be from a special program or presentation or activity or something that would involve children, young adults. So that's something that is never far from my mind because I'm conscious of needing to, put that in place for the next generation. So um, wherever, a school or whatever will have me as a speaker or activity or whatever. I'm just keeping my eyes and ears open for wherever I can participate where that's concerned.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. Sister Cheryl, Honorable Cheryl Sudduth.
Yeah, a couple things. I agree, especially in principle, that we should be ensuring that the leaders we elect are indeed honorable. And they are principled and uh, and integral and, have the same principles. And however, I, what is that integrity based on? And that they're tested, 'cause I have to say, and Brother Fleming, I believe you know this, is that everyone comes in with bright eyes. Everyone comes in, with good integrity. Everyone comes in with good intentions. Everyone comes in to office with high hopes and wanting to do the right thing. It's when they're tested, right? It's when, uh, as Sister Manira said earlier, it's when they have to toe the line. It's when it becomes, uh, is when you see their character. And character is not when I don't again, as Sister Amatullah, you're not alone. I'm alone, and I'm the same way. There's a song that I often refer back to. There's a song that says, I may not know the chapter and the verse, but I know the intent of, of it. Uh, the when you don't, when you are able to stand in principle, even when you're standing alone, this was most important to me. And sometimes what I see, regardless of if you're Muslim or Christian or Buddhist or Hindu, right? If you're not standing and holding that line for what is right, well, it doesn't matter what you ran on or what you say. If your actions show something different, there is an incident in Brother Fleming. I know you've had different stories of this as well. There was an incident in my first time with labor, and it was the project labor agreement, project labor stabilization agreement. And for those who don't know, it's where labor comes and they want to do this contract that says that every one of your major projects that costs $1 million or more will go through the union hall. The problem I had with it was that small businesses, local businesses were not included. And as you know, or you might know, many of our local, small, Black-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, Latino-owned, Native-owned, small construction companies, small engineering firms usually are not included in our labor halls, especially in our local cities. And so what I asked for was, I didn't ask for a quota, but I asked for outreach efforts. And they were not willing to include that in the contract. So I say, well, I'm not willing to vote on your PSLF. If you can't include outreach efforts, they'd include some kind of guarantee that the people who are paying for the contracts in this city.
Hmm.
And the union hall, which is not based in this city, and the union members are not coming from this city, and the average contract is about $5 million. And we are giving away $90 million. Our biggest contract is $90 million project. And you're not willing to say that even a portion of that 90 million is going to be awarded from this city that is economically depressed. I'm not willing to vote for it.
Mhm.
And I want you to know that these union targeted me and say that I was uh, that I was anti-labor. Now, mind you, my husband's a longshoreman, my son's longshoreman, my other son, he's in the airport union. I grew up in labor. My stepfather is labor. My brothers are labor. Everybody except my mother is labor.
Mhm.
But because I was not willing to sell out the community for labor, and I specifically said, I'm not going to vote against it. I'm just not voting for it unless you include a local labor component. I'm not voting for it. And I'm still not gonna vote for it again. I'm just gonna tell you right now, I'm not voting. It's back up for election again in 2026.
Mhm.
I said I don't need your money and I don't need your endorsement. I'm still not gonna vote for it again. And they tried to put somebody to run against me the last election. Every time he got
Mhm.
one vote, I got 4.5 because I stood on principle.
Yes.
And I'm gonna do it again. They're gonna put somebody else up against me again in my next election next year. I don't care. I don't care if I don't, and I say this in my thing. I don't care if I never get elected again. I'm going to stand on principle. I'm never selling out my community.
Yes.
So my point to say that is that we have people who are willing to say that I'd rather be in office than stand on principle. Because they're scared of labor, they're scared of sister. I see Sister Amatullah on. Let me make her co-host. Uh, they are willing to say that, they are willing to say, I will, I'm scared of certain affinity groups. I won't name them, but they are. There's some very powerful lobby groups. There's some very powerful labor groups. There's some very powerful, and they're more scared of them than they are of the people they represent.
Sure.
I don't care. And we need more people, to Sister Manira's point, Sister Matala, Sister Martha, Brother Muhammad. It's more important that we understand what we stand on principle than it is. And that it sometimes that means you may not be in office again, than it is to stay in office and be unprincipled.
Yes.
And so, Brother Fleming, this, to answer your question, this is what I believe. Sister Manira said to have people who toe the line. And so, I would rather be a person who toes the line for being right, not to be right. Let me take that back. To be righteous. I don't necessarily have to be right, but I refuse to be wrong, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yes. It makes a lot of sense. Alhamdulillah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've got to add 30 seconds to your comments before we open up for our guests to participate. I just want to give our listening audience another example of what our sister just said. When I was serving as county commissioner in Forsyth County, the ARPA funds came through. And what were the ARPA funds? They were the American Rescue Plan Act that provided a lot of money to the states, to the counties, to the school systems, directly from the federal government. And I don't mean small change. Some of those dollars, collectively were in the billions of dollars. But the money came directly to the local governments instead of going through one agency before it came to another. For example, usually federal dollars go to the state and the state decides how to distribute them. In this case, the federal dollars came straight from the federal government. The state got a portion, it's just their portion for the state. The counties got a portion. For example, North Carolina has 100 counties. Each county level of government got a portion of those dollars directly into the coffers. Each school board got a portion of those ARPA dollars. And you had to make the decision on what to do with those funds. Now, the most important thing to do was set a policy to govern those funds. Because if you violate the specs from the federal government, you pay a back price. They want their money back. So you have to spend according to what the specs are in that plan of government. Long story short, in the county for sites, the way I saw it, I said, listen, we need a policy that will benefit those in the greatest need. So let's look at marginalized communities. Meaning what? They'd already defined what they represent in the federal specs. My definition was you were in economic strains before COVID, during COVID, and after COVID. So your economic situation did not change that much. It was just impacted even more so because of COVID. So I said, let's set a policy to have 80% of all dollars from these American Rescue Funds to go into those poverty-restricted areas, or quote, marginalized communities. So if you want some of these dollars, show us your plan and show us how your plan will benefit these marginalized communities specifically. We went back and forth, back and forth. There's 7 of us on the county commissioners. Eventually, I got 4 votes, which means I won. It was a 4-3 decision. And so our policy was whatever funds we got, it had to be proven that indeed a benefit will go to those marginalized communities. A lot of people didn't like it, especially from the Good Old Boy Network, because their habit is whatever money comes in, you call Joe, Mo, and Charlie and let them know what's going on, what to do to get those funds, and it goes into that same circle over and over and over again. So they were highly upset with me, but really I didn't give a hoot. I wanted to make sure that indeed, just on principle, the people needing the money got the money. So it worked out pretty well. They made an exception for Rural Hall, which is a very poor community in the northern part. In fact, it's the oldest town in Forsyth County, and they needed some infrastructure, even piping. So we did define them as a need because it was marginalized to that degree. But most of the money did circulate back into those marginalized communities. And that was only done, brothers and sisters, we had a policy decision to guide those funds being spent. That has to be based on a principle. And if you're not principled in this electoral arena, the strongest wind will blow you away. And I am with this. When I first became commissioner, the lawyers came after me. the lawyer organization, because they want to have a new courthouse built. And there had been some discussion about that for 15 years, but it had not been approved yet. So every new commissioner, they would invite them to a little meeting, feed them lunch, and et cetera, try to woo them over to their side. So when I went to the meeting, I said, listen, all I can do is have lunch with you. That's all that I can say, and I thank you for the lunch. And I left. And so if you don't maintain your principles, brothers and sisters, in other words, maintain your community servant moral position, you'll be, successful by the grace of Allah. All right. We need to move on to our program. I'm hoping that Mustafa Shabazz is on because he's a real estate with a lot of success stories to share with us, because our theme for today is thriving in 25 and beyond. Please know your constitutional rights and responsibilities. But in giving examples of thriving in 25 and beyond, we want to highlight some of these successful entities we have in the community who are actually progressing in spite of our toxic political environment. So we hope that they would join us. I invited 4. I got a confirmation from 1 so far, but every now and then they do surprise me and come on anyway. So if you see a 336, please let me know. That should be the area code for Brother Mustafa Shabazz. I think it's 918, first 3 digits. If you see him, please let me know so we can go ahead and invite him to come on board. Okay, thank you very much. All right. Did our sister Amatullah want to say anything? Did she put something in the chat, our co-host? I know she said she communicated by way of chat today because she has some other situations.
For right now, I can talk because I'm not.
Oh,
I'm not. Salam rahmatullah barakatuh, everyone. But I will be getting on the road, so I may not be able to talk. What was the icebreaker? Let me see if I can break some ice up in here.
All right, then. What are you grateful for today that has your heart lifted and you're very appreciative of? And what has you concerned that you can do a change in those concerns with your own efforts? Those were the 2 questions.
Okay, what I am appreciative of is having the Quran as a guidance and Prophet Muhammad as the model standard to meet the expected behaviors that the Quran gives us, and just to be able to wake up
Mm,
every morning
mm,
and
mm,
try to in the when I first joined the Nation of Islam, I'm not sure if it was Yusuf Shah who was the captain in New York at that time, but somehow or another, someone came into the phrase "work out your salvation," and so that has always kind of been
mm,
a guiding principle for me. If something is proposed to me, I always try to put it in that thing. Is this going to help my salvation, or is this going to be,
mm,
a
mm,
deficit? So,
mhm,
so just having that kind of clarity and the different support systems um, in Oakland, Masjid al-Warthin, we have a halakha in the morning, and the theme of this whole year is the year of the Quran. And so Imam Shuaib and Dr. Zaid Abdul Karim, they facilitate that halakha, and there was a beautiful experience this morning with his Dr. Kareem Abdul Kareem showing us the connection of the um, the vocabulary and the grammar of the Quran with translation, but also with or the rendering that some translators give us, but also for our own understanding of what Allah is saying to us, the individual. And so that uh, experience this morning I was just so grateful for it because it helps in having a clarity of the message that Allah is sending to each individual and hearing each individual give their own understanding or asking a question to clarify so that they can get understanding. That's a very powerful experience. So I'm thankful for that. And so now, what can I change? What was the second part of the question?
yes. What has you very concerned today, but you also have the ability to change in some capacity?
What has me concerned today that I also have the ability to change in some capacity? Um, I think, keeping in the mission of what we're trying to do with MAP5, I would have to say to really encourage people in their own way. And with myself, I would like to encourage people to work to make changes in a way that they are comfortable in doing. Having been an organizer, I realize that people contribute the most when they are comfortable in what they are doing. What do I mean by that? Like, if I've talked with someone and I know that they're not a person who's going to go out for a demonstration or a vigil, I'm not going to press that person to do that. I want to listen to them and find out, well, what are your strengths? What do you like to do? What can you do? What are you willing to do? And try to find a way that they can participate the way that they feel that they can be most helpful. So I'm trying to get more skills um, and more strategies to be able to do that for myself and also for people that I hope to encourage.
Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. I think that was Captain Joseph that I knew him. He became Yusuf Shaw in New
Right,
York years later.
right,
But I know exactly what you're talking about, though.
right, right.
Well, thank you
He
very
was a
much.
character. He was a
Yes.
character.
And
But
not that's all, but
alhamdulillah, he did a lot of good. You
yes,
had to,
yes,
I
yes.
mean, he'll come down hard on you. I know one day he read me the riot act up and down. I was a lieutenant,
Mm,
and he really got on me. Um, and I would have been discouraged, except the captain, sister captain at that time, Amina Rasul. She was Clotel at that time, Clotel Amina. She said, "Sister, don't worry about that." She said, "Just be careful the next time, but remember, it is the people who are not doing anything who don't make mistakes. If you're
mm,
doing something, you're going to
mm,
make a
mm.
mistake, but you got to
Yes.
learn from your mistake and keep on going." So
That's
that
right.
was a blessing for me.
Alhamdulillah,
And that's
alhamdulillah.
important for everybody, for all of us to
Yeah.
think of. We're going to
Yes.
make mistakes for
Yes. It's
sure.
called being a human
Being a
being. You're gonna make
human being,
mistakes.
being a human being.
You're gonna make your
Yeah,
mistakes. So thank you so much for those insights. We appreciate it very much. Did
alhamdulillah.
everyone get a chance to comment in terms of their concerns that they might be able to make a difference? I hope I didn't leave anyone out. I don't want to do that intentionally. Okay. If not, then if we, I see someone else just came on. No? Okay. All right then. I want to invite those that I have invited to be a part of the program today, entitled Thriving in 25 and Beyond. And of course, know your constitutional rights and responsibilities. But in Thriving in 25, I was asked the other day to participate in a lifeline discussion. And I started off with a quote from the Holy Quran that I want to share now on how do we engage from our religious perspective in the community. Again, how do we engage from our religious perspective in the community? And so I don't usually do this on this program, but for today's discussion, I'm going to just share this one ayah from the Holy Quran. And for those that would like to check me on this, it is Surah 2, ayat 177. It reads as follows. And for those who may not know that language, I've been seeking Allah's grace and mercy from the influence of Satan in my life as I read his word. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It is not righteousness that you turn your faces towards east or west, but it is righteousness to believe in Allah and the last day, and the angels, and the book, and the messengers, to spend of your substance out of love for Him, for your kin, for orphans, for the needy, for the wayfarer, for those who ask, and for the ransom of slaves, to be steadfast in prayer and practice regular charity, to fulfill the contracts which ye have made, and to be firm and patient in pain or suffering and adversity. And throughout all periods of panic, such are the people of truth, the God fearing. So, this sort of gives us a perspective on things that we can be doing outside, of course, and inside the four walls of our various faith centers, masjids, centers, etc., that we have to be engaged in the community. And you have to ask yourself, how are we impacting the level of economic in our community? How are we impacting the educational level in our community? What are we doing for social justice issues in our community? How are we really making a difference to demonstrate our faith in the communities? That's a very important question to answer and to sort of search your soul on it, because that's a collective duty for all of us. And if we focus in on just the political arena, we have some very, very important midterm elections coming up, very critical, where you can make a difference individually. But first of all, realizing the value of your vote. Let me say that again. Realizing the value of your vote. Your vote is critical, and it really represents your voice in government. Now, I know we have those elements in the community that try to encourage you and whisper in your ear that your vote doesn't count. Let me be very frank, it does. It makes all the difference. And when you don't vote, you're supporting the candidate that you may not support by not voting. You're giving that person your vote anyway. So your participation is very, very critical. And if you really want to thrive, and 25 and beyond, you got to educate yourself. You got to engage yourself in the political processes. Now that has various means of doing that. It's not just a vote. It can make phone calls to someone that you think represents your best interest. I encourage the believers to always use a platform to state your positions on. If you don't know what your platform is, I encourage you to go to the website of the American Coalition for Good Government. That is www.americancoalitionforgoodgovernment.org. I repeat, www.americancoalitionforgoodgovernment.org. On that website, you will see an agenda, you'll see a handbook, you'll see some position papers we've taken over the years, etc. But if you just look at the agenda, what it represents is a collective effort to list our value systems that we expect from every elected official. It's to be adjusted based on your needs and your localities because every community is a little different, but it's a base agenda you can use to question those people running for office. And your objective is to try to get them to agree with some of those to put them into their platform if they want to secure your vote. So make your effort into the political arena based on a moral position. And we know our guiding light for that is, in fact, we really have a foundation one just in the Holy Quran, not to mention the Sunnah Prophet Muhammad and the application of the tafsir of Imam Wartharin Muhammad, who was with us for 33 years as a living example. So we have options and a lot of reading to do and some studying to do and some reflection to do, and then take some action. Do something. Don't just sit on the sideline, brothers and sisters. I was also encouraging the group that I talked to yesterday about how they can go about being more effective in the community. Maintain your principles first. Your moral compass has to be solid as a rock. Then the winds won't blow your way so easily because they will come strongly. They will come after you. I hear a question. Question? Yes.
Brother Fleming, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So, because before you go down the moral track, I want to ask you a question about the Coalition for Good Governance and how you track the your the politicals, the elected officials, and how you make how the organization makes its scoring or how it scores the elected officials on their record.
Okay.
What metrics do you use, and how can what methodology do you use to not just track, but to come up with the metrics and then this is what I want to know. Or what can you reveal to the public about how do you come up with that rubric and the methodology to list those metrics and to track those elected officials? Can you discuss that, please?
Sure, be glad to. I'll give you two quick examples, and then I'll take an hour and explain the others if we have enough time. Verse, what our sister just said is very, very important. But the way that ACGG is organized.
First time, Sister Amatullah, he didn't say 30 seconds.
Yes, he did not mention his 5 seconds.
Oh, checkmate on your brother. That's for sure there. But in terms of the methodology, the way the agenda is organized on the platform or on the website, it's really designed for the local community to make that critical decision. We give you the foundation. You invite those people running for judges in your vicinity to come to respond to those questions. You invite your council people to come to your forum and ask them those questions. You invite those state representatives, or for that matter, federal representatives, whatever forum you organize with other people now, don't just do it solo, but invite others to also join you setting up those forums. And we've done that many times across the country. And then you address them with your specific questions from your agenda and get their responses. Now, because it's organized that way, your local outreach coordinator for ACGG would be the one sort of responding to how these people responded to the questions we have on our agenda. We don't make recommendations on who to vote for. We just give you information on the positions on various, statements they make, and we try to keep up with that so you'll be informed on what their positions are. But we are 501c, so we're open to Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, Green Party. I don't care what party you're affiliated with. If you can come on and identify with our agenda concerns, you're invited to participate. So we don't endorse candidates. We do encourage memberships to support candidates of their own choosing with their finances, with their time, et cetera, whatever resource they have to share. We encourage that. But we don't come up with a major, like another group that I work with, the Dr. Barbara Skinner does. They actually give a report card on historical position of these candidates. If they've been in the election process for a while, they have a scoring card on issues they voted for. That's a different organizational structure. And I work with some of those groups. The same occurs for the NAACP that I work with. I'm a lifetime member. We have a report card. We have another group called Change, do the same kind of thing. They have a report card on the candidates, and they pass those out on election day. This is where they voted on this position, on that position. You should be informed on their historical voting pattern. That's the kind of matrix those organizations that have that kind of structure do. ACGG basically informs you on the process, encourages you to form your own structure to evaluate your, potential elected officials, and you make those local decisions in your area. So we don't have the kind of matrix to say, look, you voted for this in 1945, 1954, 1974, et cetera, 2005, and therefore we're not going to support you. That's not what we do. Now, if you read some of the position statements, someone's coming my heel to my house that I did not invite. I'm sorry, y'all. Excuse me. Okay, no, they're stopping. So I encourage you, if you don't have an organization like the Women's League of Voters who do the same thing, very similar thing, find an organization that does just that. They give report cards out. We have a very strong local one called Change. And in that organization, we invite every elected official, no matter what position you hold, to come to a meeting. And it's an interfaith, interreligious, it's nonpartisan. And we have specific questions, 20 of them. And we ask those questions to them. And if, based on how they answer them, we give them a grade. And when they all finish, we send a report card. These were the answers these elected officials gave us on these concerns that we had raised as a community. Vote accordingly. So those are two different things. Believe it or not, even in 2025, some of our Muslims aren't convinced to even get involved in the political process, which is really a shame. So we're still educating, we're still encouraging, we're still inviting them to participate at this point in our development. But inshallah, we'll get to the point where we too can have, quote, quote, an ACGG current report in focus. In fact, a couple of brothers are working on that. They call it in focus, specifically on ACGG issues. I hope that sort of answers your question, since Amatullah. Very, very important question to ask, though.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people an insight on what goes into what you're doing. Okay.
Yes, by all means, by all means. Okay, has Brother Mustafa come on yet? I'm hoping this brother will come on, otherwise I'm gonna have to fill in for him. Okay. Not there, my brother. I will see you soon, my brother. That's guaranteed. All right. So when you look at that question that I raised, or that comment about thriving in 25 and beyond, how do we do that? We have to build coalitions, brothers and sisters. We have to build coalitions. Coalitions based on what? Common concern. Common concerns that we can agree on. I'll give another quick example. The group that I referred to earlier called Change, we started an effort to take the partisanship out of school board elections. Don't put a D beside their name or an R. Just education should be independent of that kind of thought process. It shouldn't be based on party alignment. First year, we're very successful. And then somebody started paying people. And money can always corrupt, unfortunately. That's one of those elements you have to have a strong moral conscience against. And people began to say, well, we can get more support from certain people if indeed they align with the party. And so the first time I went through, no D's, no R's. Second time, all of a sudden, the executive committee said, well, maybe we won't try that again because we're getting a lot of pushback from the community. And I said, wait a minute, now either you're in a position or you're not in a position. So I'm afraid I can't go along with this change back to the alignment of party, especially for education. Those are our children. Your political position shouldn't mean a hoot when it comes to serving the needs of children. In fact, there's a meeting this evening that I've invited to come to at Carver High School to deal with an issue we have locally. Very quickly, we had a $46 million deficit to start the school year off. Let me say that again. A $46 million deficit. Now, Winston-Salem is the fifth largest city in North Carolina, meaning the fifth largest school system. How do you get $46 million in the hole without somebody knowing what's going on? What was their solution? Their solution was firing about 300 people from the school system. Now, I went down to the county commissioners. Every now and then I would show up and make a comment. I said, listen, policy makers are responsible for this chaos we're in right now. And someone not checking what they were doing from a policy position, you don't overrun accounts like that year after year after year after year, and your chief financial officer doesn't say anything about it. You know what he did? He quit. I said, that should be an indication of what's really going on, because if you look at those individual accounts, I know a little bit about banking. Every account has a limit. When you run out of funds, you run out of funds. What this guy was doing was taking funds from another account, putting it into this account, and 1 year he put $30 million almost into bonuses that he didn't have. Small example. So what did that mean for the school system? The state is saying, look, you owe us some money. I think they said $18 million. And we're not going to give you another dime, so you first pay that off, and then we give you consideration. So we came back to the county, got about $8 million, and people upset about that amount, but it came from a funds were not going to be spent. And then they said, we've got a new superintendent. That one left. And so I said to them, listen, your school board is the board to make decisions and make sure they're enforced properly. Some of those people should be brave enough and principled enough to say, look, I made a mistake. I didn't check on this, and I'm going to pass my hat to someone else to be responsible because I blew it. That's just being honest about it, right? And then we found out an audit came in from the state, did a full audit. This problem's been going on for 4 superintendents before this one. 4. So it's an old issue, it's a serious issue, but it's a small example also, brothers and sisters, what happens when you don't really hold people accountable for what they do once you put them in those positions. And the policy decision makers, the buck starts and stops with them because they're supposed to be accountable, and they're elected by the people to make sure that happens. So they asked me to come to this meeting tonight to make a few comments. I know the General Assembly is out of session right now. They don't come back in session until next week. And I go down there quite often, represent Retired Teachers Association. I'm one of those quick response persons who go down and show up to make arguments about different policies. But I know this issue has to be resolved by, first of all, holding somebody accountable, period. Case closed. Someone is responsible for this situation. So don't pass the buck. Don't push it under the rug. Just say, this person was responsible, and this is what this person has to do to make amends to the situation, even if it means jail time, if you intentionally did this. And I don't have any beef about that. If you do wrong, you pay the price for it. All right, so how do we thrive in 25? First have some kind of a community servant moral fiber. Nothing perfect about you. Now, don't make that mistake because we all are humans and we're all in this road toward trying to be the best we can as human beings. But at least have a principled position when you get involved in this thing called politics. As I said earlier, if you don't have a strong principle fiber in you, the winds will blow. Someone will say, will you take this $10,000 check from me if you vote a certain way? Others will say, as our sister said, if you vote for this and we got partners who are going to benefit from this, will you do this for them and your community sacrifices, as a result of that kind of thing? Or we guarantee you X amount of dollars for your campaign year after year after year if you vote this certain way. So you really have to have the fiber in you to say absolutely no, and sometimes HELLO, so you can go on about your business and go to sleep at night and rest, and know that you've done the best you can with what you had to work with. So that principle is very, very important. And then beyond that, brothers and sisters, I always suggest that no matter what organization you're with, have a plan. Have a plan. You go in with a plan, you can come up with some better results. And we use this methodology quite often in ACGG when we talk around the country. Organize yourself specifically for a specific purpose. Develop a strategy. A strategy is nothing but a thought out plan. What is your strategy to accomplish your mission? What are you going to do? In other words, what are you going to implement? And then finally, how are you going to evaluate what you just did on a systemic basis so you can learn how to improve what you've done or to increase what you're doing to make it, even more effective if indeed it's successful. But have your quote metric measurements that you can identify with data on how well you've done. So organizing, strategizing, implementing, and evaluating, just fundamental way of, getting things done as an organization. And it can apply across the banner of different structures, whether it's profit or nonprofit for that matter. It actually works. And I've been in cases where I've seen it work. And I've seen many people come in with a nonprofit status with no board, which to me is an oxymoron. If you're going to be a nonprofit, you got to at least have a board to bounce ideas off of, and boards to represent your sources and resources of people. At least they should have contacts with people with resources. And that's what makes your board effective. You need different skill sets. You need someone on that board to know something about marketing, something about financing, something about planning, something about community engagement. All those elements make your organization that more effective. So include that in your structure. We had a young man who had a good idea about farming. Dr. Bradshaw, I hope you don't mind me using his name. But he came to me and said, Fleming, can you help me get X amount of dollars for my farm? I said, Dr. Bradshaw, give me the name of your boards and we'll make some kind of assessment of how effective you've been. Well, my board resigned. I said, Doc, you can't make an appeal for county dollars without a board. Get your board organized first, come back and we'll talk. And then I found out that he was a problem, that, he couldn't work with people. And so that's why his board resigned. So why am I saying that, brothers and sisters? You get people around you, you don't have to agree with them, but at least be able to work with them to accomplish a common goal. And there are times when you have to walk away, but don't come for public dollars unless you really have yourself structured with an operating board to support your organization. And I'll say one more thing, and then I'm going to sort of open it up for questions too. I've had the misfortune of working with some people who were not completely ethical. And, some of you may know that I grew up in a grocery store that my grandfather owns. So since a little boy, I've always been in an environment to make my own money. And so this group came to me as builders, minority builders. And I'm on the governor's ethics and qualification board for all trades, meaning basically they call us the Q board. So if you mess up inspecting a building, whether it's fire, codes or plumbing codes, whatever the case may be, and you jeopardize the safety of someone in that structure, we deal with that on a regular basis. This young group came to me and they could do this job well, and they could do that job well. And I said, well, brothers, who's the general contractor in the group that's licensed? Well, we're in the process. I said, no, you can't be in the process. You got to have that done before I can really support what you're trying to do in this effort. And I like your ideas. Let's be legal, though. At least be legal. And let's make an argument based on legal, proficient, persuasive arguments on you being able to do the work. And later on, I found out one of the guys in the group had gotten a contract from the city of Winston-Salem, didn't complete the job, and then tried to sue the city for not paying him. And so we had to have a closed door man-to-man conversation about that. Don't ever use my name for something that's anything but above board activities. And I heard you were giving the mayor my name as your reference. And so we had to have a little frank conversation, the language of which I will not discuss on the air, but I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I can relate to you based on the need that you need to hear my ears or hear from me a very frank conversation, because my grandfather had a PhD in Christology, and I can go that route if I have to get your full attention. But don't be unethical. Have a moral base, and don't try to use people for your own agenda. So that's another element. We have to be honest with each other, brothers and sisters. Be frank, because there's a price you pay when you're not. And it's not very, very pleasant sometimes. Sometimes it's a public embarrassment, and sometimes that's required to check people sometimes. But to thrive, of course, as I said before, have a moral base, work with people, build that coalition of people who have a very similar mindset, a value system, and then be willing to put in the energy. It takes time. Sometimes it takes sacrifices, but you need to have a long-term plan. We have a hard time sometimes coming up with a 3-month plan or a 6-month plan or a year plan or a 2-year plan. And I encourage people that I talk to, I said, listen, I worked in a group that had 20-year plans. You got to think things through. How will this impact your situation 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line? We know law's in charge, but what are you doing to contribute your part? He gave you a brain to think with, use it. So think things through. Come up with a long-term plan and a short-term plan, implement it, adjust it, etc. And then, the resources may come to you with a lot of hard work, vision, and honesty. I got to put honesty in there because that's a very critical component of any sincere, successful plan. Okay, then. My hope and prayer was that our brothers would come on. There's a young man doing a program at the end of October in Raleigh, North Carolina. And honoring Imam Muhammad's birthday and Sister Claire Muhammad's birthday, etc., called Interfaith Celebration of Imam Warithuddin Muhammad. He may be on with us next Monday, inshallah. And another young man did an outstanding work with a group called Living HBCU Legends. What does that mean? HBCU are historically black universities and colleges, primarily centered in North Carolina. This young man and his wife and his advising board have been doing this for 12 years, brothers and sisters. What does he do? He recognizes graduates from these HBCUs who are doing outstanding work in the community, making all kinds of contributions. He gives each one of them a medallion, honors them and their accomplishments, and then gives scholarships to every HBCU in the state of North Carolina for 12 years. So the amount of money he's given, a lot of it is based on him working with sponsors, working with other people who support the idea of education and its importance. But he officially, no letters beside his name, officially, in terms of degrees, beyond just, I think, his first degree. But he just had the heart to want to do that kind of work. And now, because of his honesty, he has created an advisory board that you wouldn't even imagine, with all kind of people coming through that have all kind of resources, and they support education. So it's not the letters beside your name, in front of your name. It's your sincere effort to try to help people in a genuine way. And if you're sincere about it and work hard about it, don't give up. Don't give up. Keep working. Allah will bless you, inshallah, to be successful in your endeavors. So he's another one we're going to sort of celebrate also his accomplishments. Some people are really doing things. And the last one is someone who's very much involved in politics. She's really, really busy right now. We've had on the program before, Linda Sutton. They're doing a focused campaign on this midterm elections and why it's so important for us to be organized to really push this envelope. If you're dissatisfied with what you see with these people in Congress with no backbone, vote them out of office. Vote them out of office and take 5 people with you to also vote them out. But if you're content, don't do anything and things will not change. You got to do something, as I said earlier. You got to be active. Take some action. Don't just talk about it. Please, as the brother said on the street, be about it. I'm going to pause right there to see if you have any comments from our listening, our co-hosts on this thing, thriving in 25 and beyond. And our second part, we'll talk about knowing your Constitution. your rights and responsibilities. Any comments from our co-host or our listening audience at this point on what we said thus far?
You're unmuting, Sister Amatullah. Both Amatullah, you were on mute. Sister Imrani, go ahead.
Yes. Uh, I noticed that the subject of morals that has come up several times. And do we have anything that's written or established as to the basics of good morals, regardless of a person's religion or lack thereof? Just some basic things that will be considered to be good morals that we would uh, be sure to uh, observe or evaluate persons that we are trying to support. Uh, do you understand my question? It may be a little bit too general, huh? Because it seems that people have different definitions. As I was thinking about it, that each person may have an idea of what's considered to be good morals or poor morals. And so we would have to have kind of a general consensus of some things that would just be and this is where I draw the line. This is, maybe I may accept that a person whatever cheats on their spouse or does this or that. But when it comes down to political office, then this is where we should draw the line. And again, maybe this is too general now, but I was just, just started, or we just started my thought processes to going as to whether we maybe need to define a little bit more what are the things that we don't cross the line on in terms of morals or lack of morals. Some of the
Great.
things that some of the previous presidents have done, or current or previous presidents have done, have been considered to be immoral, but were they, uh, you know, so that we couldn't support them in that particular office. So anyway, again, if that's too general, too far off the subject, then that's fine. But it was just where I was thinking as I was listening to the various discussions today.
Yeah,
It's a great
it's a very good,
question.
very good question. Very good question. I'm going to be the last one to comment on it. Let's let everyone else have a chance to tackle that one, and I'll make some comments on the tail end, inshallah. Who would like to respond?
I think it's a great question. And Sister Amatullah Sabrie had
Yes.
she started talking but she was on mute, so I'm gonna let her respond.
Okay. I hope can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I'm on an
Yes.
elevator, so I hope you don't lose this. But one thing, as a starting point, I would say as a if you don't want to deal with religious ideology or persuasion, if the person is someone who has held a political office or any kind of office or profession that has a ethics board or ethics committee or something like that, you could always investigate to see, have there been any ethics violations in that person's history? Just as a starting point, and then that might start conversations or sort of like prime the well for, okay, we can start at this point, and now let's see what's important to the committee, the community that he is serving. Are is the golden rule neutral enough for us to say that we can accept that? Has this person been caught in lies? The different um, forms that they have to fill out for when they're going to be a candidate. Have there been discrepancies? A lot of times people they'll pad their their educational background. And all of a sudden they got a PhD and they just barely got a GED. So those are sort of kind of areas where we can start. And I'm gonna go on mute because I'm gonna have some background noise. I hope
Thank you
that
very
helps.
much.
I like it. I like it. I want to introduce one thing and then I want to listen to the audience, sir. I want to say this, Sister Amrani, and this is not mine, but I heard this and it feeds off of something my grandmother used to say, and I heard somebody else say it too, but I know that I've heard this in different iterations. And it was when you say, you know, did they cheat on their wife and all of that? And I heard this, and I firmly believe this. If the person that you sleep with it can't trust you, why should I?
Mm, 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 mm. Whoa.
This your most intimate relationship.
Mm,
So I get it. They sometimes, you know, indiscretions happen and all of these other stuff. But there's the one I think that I have the hardest time with.
mm, mm,
So
mm,
I'm gonna
mm.
leave it there. That this
Wow.
this kind of what my grandmother used to say that, and I didn't understand it when I was younger, but kind of my son, you know, he was only like maybe 21, 22. He was coming out of Morehouse, and he said something, and I thought it was very wise. He said, Mom, the way I look at it is if a guy cheats on his girlfriend, I can't do business with him. If he lies to me, I can't do business with him. And I thought it was just really profound for a young guy to say this. He said, if I catch you in a lie about a small thing that you didn't have to lie to me about, if you're a thief, and that was, I think he was talking to me about somebody who he said stole something and then lied about it. And he said he lied to him. It was a friend of his who lied to him about something really minor. He said, I can't do business with him because I was asking him why he didn't do business with this guy he grew up with, who was also trying to break into the music industry. And my son is a producer. And he told me he had lied to him about something very minor. And he said, he lied to me. And it struck me as just very interesting. And he said, he lied to me. And I said, okay, people lie all the time. And he said, yeah, but it was about something that was very innocuous. He didn't have to lie, could have just told me. He said, but if he lies to me about something very small, I can do business with you. And so I took that to mean the same thing about like what my grandmother used to say about somebody who, you know, if the person you sleep with can't trust you, I can't trust you. And if you lie to me about something small, I can't trust you. Then why should I trust you in positions um of important matters, especially in important leadership matters? And then the last thing I'll say is I say this when I go to a hotel. I travel a lot, as most of you who follow this show know. When I go into a hotel, if I see that the bright work, which is like the faucets, the 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 shiny surfaces are not clean. If I see that the remote control is not clean, I don't trust that the sheet is clean. Because if the small things are not clean, then the big things are not clear. I hope that makes sense to you. If I
Makes a
see
lot of
one,
sense.
yeah, if I see one little piece of lead or dirt on the floor or on the carpet, I don't trust that you clean the room. So my level of trust is very small if you lied to me about one small thing as a politician or as a whatever. So this what that means. So so Sister Ronnie, this I agree with you. So I think that establishing integrity in what we can establish as our base level of integrity is very important. What
Yes.
can we accept and what can we not accept? So Brother Fleming, what say you?
Thank you very much. First, thank you for those insights. There was a curriculum we used to teach called Character Counts. To sort of put this in perspective, it's not as popular today, but within that curriculum, there were things like honesty, integrity, reliability, trustworthiness, etc. All of these are marks of one's character, which gets down to your moral fiber. If you remember the movie Ray Charles, when he was a young boy, his mother would say, "Scratch a thief, find a liar," or "Scratch a liar, find a thief." It was a little saying, but I heard that often when I was a little boy. If someone will lie to you, they'll steal from you. If someone will lie to you, they'll steal from you. So when we organize that agenda for ACGG, if you look at the agenda, it represents value positions. Right? This is a synonym between value and morality, right? But these are value systems sort of represents what we hold dear to our hearts. And there are positions about those, so we've listed about 10 of them. They can sort of be used as a guide when you're evaluating potential elected officials. Moral character is the best representation of yourself you're going to have. And I'm going to push forward a little bit. We have a guy that has 34 felonies sitting in the White House right now. 34. Now I can go through a lot more that he's done also in terms of abusing women, etc. And been found guilty of all these things. And yet in this country, 70 million people still voted for this guy. In spite of these flaws that were publicly known, that's not talking about what some people don't know about his lack of moral character. So even with that, the standard is cutting so low, unfortunately, that people look like it's no big deal. It is the most important deal because that kind of position will allow you to think that you're the only one that matters and what you decide is the only thing that counts. And so you bomb a little small ship coming from Venezuela and kill all these people and claim they were bringing drugs into the country. You send a jet into independent country and drop bombs on a mountain claiming that indeed you're doing something for the safety of them not being able to build a nuclear bomb. You put tariffs on people around the world thinking that what you do won't impact other countries doing the same thing for you with a long-term effect on what you're doing today. So you have no moral compass on what you can do. So morality is a fundamental requirement we have to have when we look at people we choose to support. And everyone won't fit that position. There's a reason why very few people are chosen to represent the message. I'm going to say that again. There's a reason why very few people are chosen to represent the message because it takes sacrifice. I was reading the other day about what happened in, it wasn't even called Mecca then, it had another name. The way these people acted toward each other, it was almost like barbarianism and tribalism to the degree I had never read before. The level of bloodletting with no consideration. You did something to me, my great great grandchildren would get back at you. I mean, that was the thinking process. And so when this little man stood up and said, look, take all those 365 idols out of the Kaaba, he was an economic threat. Let me say that again. He was an economic threat of their well-being, and they looked upon him as just that and boycotted him and everybody who said they believed in him until his first wife died. I'm gonna be very straightforward with you now. And these are so-called Arabs. No, they are called Arabs, not so-called, who went out intentionally to kill this man. Now, we can go into a lot of discussions on what happened here, there, and everywhere, but to save his small community, what did he have to do? Send them out of Jathrib into our vicinity that we call Ethiopia today, under the rulership of a Christian leader, to save their lives. To save their lives. And this Christian leader saw value in them that complemented what he also believed in and said, no, you will not take them back. Even early on in his history, his wife, Khadijah, will always elevate her to the highest echelon of paradise. Who did she go to confirm that indeed this man was the messenger of God? Her Christian uncle. I mean, you have to really read history very carefully to see your connection with these things. So when people tell me they can't work with certain groups because of this, that, or the other, I really ask them to reflect just a little bit on your own personal life. Go back 2 generations in your own personal life. How did your immediate family survive in their relationships with others? Was it just, this is my house and nobody else's house, don't come in? Or were you from the family system? I have a cup of sugar. If you need a half a cup, come on, get your half a cup, because none of us have much of anything anyway. So let's share what we have. The same, brothers and sisters, applies to our philosophy of life. None of us have all the right answers, but we have something to contribute to the discussion. And one thing I always carry with me when I'm involved in a lot of interfaith discussions, I say, listen, my leader, Imam Wartha Muhammad, said many times, the solution is in the problems. Put all the problems on the table, let's look at them critically. Look at what the problems are. You will find the solution to your problems in the problems themselves, if you're willing to take the time to discuss it and be honest about it. If you're willing to get into the sure mindset to say that there's no big I's and no little U's, we're all equal in the eyesight of Almighty God. So let's solve the problems collectively with sincerity, not trying to jack somebody up, but just with sincerity, try to come up with a common answer to support the greatest good for the community, inshallah. So character is very, very important. Your moral fiber basically supports your character. If you don't have that, your success in life is very, very limited, almost just your household, because no one sees what you're doing there. But if you're a public figure, you better have a very strong character base, or you'll get eaten up out here and chewed out and spit out before you know it. And you can't blame anybody but yourself, you know. So yes, I would suggest if you have the time, go to the website of ACGG as a starting point. Look at that agenda that we put together that really sort of encapsulates some of the moral issues that we've taken as very serious reflections of our position on values. If we value these things, then we hope you would also identify with some of these things in your agenda and include them in your platform. That's the purpose, that's the angle, that's the strategy. I hope that answers the question that was raised earlier. But let's get some other thoughts too. I want to share this medium, get some other perspectives. Feel free to join in. If not, we'll go to the Constitution. We don't want to waste time. You know, time is money, money is time. We don't want to waste either one of those because we have very limited time on both of those. And it's not guaranteed the next moment, not to mention the next day or the next hour. So let's use the time as much as we can to benefit the greatest number. All right. Here's my question to you about the Constitution. Fundamentally, how many parts do we have in the Constitution? How many separate parts do we have in the Constitution? I'll give you the first one. It starts with the letter P. That's the first part.
Preamble.
Preamble. All right, all right, all right. And the first word in the preamble is what letter? What pronoun? The very first word in the preamble says what?
We.
It's we. W-E-W-E.
Sorry, I
We
was
the people.
sorry, I was on mute. I was on mute. Sorry, but yes.
So that
I
concept.
love a good quiz. I love a good quiz.
It's we. In fact, that used to what I was teaching civics a long time ago. I said, listen, here's your bonus question
Yes.
for the week. Bring it back to me
Yes.
by Friday. How many times you find the word I in the Constitution I just assigned you to read? Go back and read it carefully. Read it
Yes.
carefully. You will not find the letter I. The whole
No.
concept is we, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, promote the general welfare, provide for the common defense, secure the blessings of ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution of the United States, period. Now, so there's 6 specific things listed of why we even have what we call the United States government. It's in the preamble. Every state constitution has a very similar structure. Look at the preamble. It sort of identifies what that state considers very, very important or why they exist. So you start your arguments with what's in the preamble. Why do we have this government to begin with? Then you go into how the organization is structured. In our Constitution, we have 7 articles, right?
Articles.
7 articles, and it sort of defines each one of the roles of government in those articles. Prime example, Article 1 talks about really what should be the most important part of government. Congress and the Senate, the legislative branch, right? So the legislative branch say, what's their job? You make the laws. And you're also supposed to come up with a budget and spend the money accordingly based on your budget. And you also have some other duties. We won't go into those today, but broadly speaking, you make the legislative laws, that's your call. Not to let someone else decide what the law should be through executive orders. Then we go to Article 2, which is the executive branch of government. It's very specific, brothers and sisters. There are basically 3 clauses, maybe 4, based on how you read it, of what the president can and cannot do according to the Constitution. And this person is pushed the envelope, almost maximized his pushing at this point with what the executive branch and government can do. But it's identified in the Constitution very specifically. And then, of course, the 3rd branch talks about the judicial branch, how they're supposed to do what? Interpret whether or not what you just passed is constitutional or not. So Article 1, make the laws, legislative branch. 2, enforce the laws. 3, put the test to them if indeed it's constitutional. That is supposed to be your balance of power in government. 3 distinct branches, and each one has specific charges in the Constitution. If you're not acquainted with those, especially that Article 2, take the time to look up what's in the Constitution, not just what someone says is in the Constitution. So you can, that person you decide to vote for next, see if they're familiar with what's in the Constitution, whether it be your state constitution or your federal constitution or your local ordinances that govern your city. Every city has a charter approved by the state legislative body that identifies what the city can and cannot basically do, even being recognized as a charter or a city or an incorporated entity, however they form the township, etc. That permission is given to them by your state government. So beyond those first 3, you have 4. It talks about the whole relationship between them. You have 5, 6, and 7. We won't go into all of those, but each one defines a specific role of government, 7 articles. Here's the contention among some people. They will say, well, in Article 1, we were defined as 3/5 of a person. Yes, when it was written, that's true. But then we go into the Bill of Rights, right? The first 10 amendments, that's the 3rd part of the Constitution, defines your individual rights in this country as a citizen. From Amendment 1, giving you freedom of religion, of the press, to petition your government, etc. All the way down to 10. And then we have also what we call the Freedom Amendments, 13, 14, and 15, that deals with us specifically in the institution, or that peculiar institution called slavery, Article 13. 14, giving us due process, recognize us to have a right to vote to a great degree, or due process specifically. And then 15, of course, giving, at that time, males the right to vote. And that's something to discuss another time, not today. But then you have 27 total. So the whole order of the whole Constitution in a simple format, P, the preamble, 7A articles, 27 changes in those articles over time. So it's P, 7A, 27C. That's your code. So if you want to find something in the Constitution, use that code as your guiding light. Take the time to really study your Constitution. Maybe on another occasion, we can talk about the history, about how these things got formed. There's a very interesting history on how the thinking was then, but you can't stop right there. There's another book I highly recommend called The Federalist Papers. It was an attempt to really explain what's in the Constitution, because a lot of people then cannot even read, brothers and sisters. You're talking about 1700s, 1780s, etc. And so you had a group of people called the Federalists. They said, look, we got to have a very strong central government. We don't ever want to have something called King George telling us what to do with a tyrannical impact, but we need a strong government. Another group came about called the Anti-Federalists. They said, no, we cannot have a strong government without individual freedoms guaranteed. That's the group that pushed for the Bill of Rights. And then you had a third book called Common Cause, just to get the idea accepted that we need to break away. And by that, I mean those that were living then from old King George. And here's your Common Cause to explain why we should do that. So, in summary, 3 additional books to read about the Constitution. The Federalist Papers, it's not an easy read, but it's worth reading, at least a couple of them anyway. The Anti-Federalist Papers, to get an idea of what they were thinking. And then Common Cause, to give you a sense of what the environment was like politically, socially, and economically during that time of history. Background information so you better understand the founding documents that sort of govern this country. And certain states had something already on the books similar to that. Some of them were adopted. Many people forget that we're supposed to have a bicameral government, meaning what? Federal government separated from the state government by design. That's why every state has their own constitution. Every state has its own constitution, except for 2 territories, Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. That's a whole different discussion. But we'll pause there for a second. I hope it gives you an umbrella perspective on our Constitution, but delve into it in more details. We can always discuss them, of course, with more historical context, how they came about, what they mean today, and how many people really know that it's only 4 pages to the whole Constitution. It was originally written. Very simple document. It's just the language was such that many people did not understand it then. And believe it or not, even today, unless you go into political science to study it or go into law, a lot of people today don't understand what's in the Constitution. And that's your foundational rights to be a citizen in this country. And you should know your rights. Along with knowing your rights, you got a responsibility too, and some duties to fulfill your citizenship responsibilities. You're a citizen in this country, born in this country, mother and fathers with sweat and tears to give you an opportunity in this country. You have a debt, an obligation to do what you can to support the principal idea in this country. And how did Imam Washington Muhammad identify the principal idea of America, its essence? He advised us to look into that second paragraph of the Declaration of Independence. And it says very simply, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. He called that the essence of the American idea of government. And he also said, because he used the word creator in that paragraph, they didn't identify the name of the deity, they simply say creator, that concept is a Quranic concept. In fact, at one of the ISNA's programs, he said it twice. He said, let me say this again. That concept is a Quranic concept. And then he repeated himself because he was dealing with some mindsets then that didn't want to identify anything at all with what the government of this country was doing to benefit our identity as Muslims in America. So we have a choice and we have a duty and responsibility to contribute to the growth of this country, to make it what it's not, not just for our benefit, for our lifetime, but for the benefit of our children, our grandchildren, and great-grandchildren to come, inshallah. Let's do our part and thank Allah by being active, not being complacent, not just being critiques, but being constructive developers on the idea of we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if you're up in Philadelphia again and go down to where they wrote this document, Philadelphia Square, and go into the house where Thomas Jefferson and those other 4 guys were writing this document, you'll see 4 different copies that they edited each time. In the first one, they included eliminating slavery. They couldn't get that passed. They had property instead of pursuit of happiness. And they dealt with that for a while, debated that for a while. And finally, you'll see in case the final draft, and they had to get those people who gathered in Philadelphia, quote, illegally, to try to solve a trade dispute, to look at this document again and see if they will agree that it's time to break away from old King George. And the oldest person there during the discussion, he was 80 years old, Benjamin Franklin. And this is a little sidebar. He got so bored sometimes he'd fall asleep. And not just from being sleepy, he had a little habit of having a little Kool-Aid on the side. And they'd have to walk him down to his house, which is not too far from there. It still stands in Philadelphia. So he could recover from the beverages he was drinking and be ready to go back to talk some more the next day. All right, that's my short presentation on the Constitution. If you have any questions, fire away, and we'll try our best to answer them, inshallah. Is that Sister Ronnie's hand that I see, or a sign, or I see the eye? If you have any questions, please feel free to ask your questions now, or raise your hand and we'll identify you and give you a chance to comment and or ask a question. And we have 3 good minutes. Here's your question for me. Okay, go right ahead.
Assalamu alaikum, Martha Nyla here. And two, I know I'm always saying I'm gonna call you my Fleming El-Amin, Commissioner Emeritus. My question is in reference to, like, in our neighborhood here in St. Petersburg, Florida, we have a group of neighborhood associations.
Yes.
And I've worked through Citizens for Excellence and Found Change, AVREC, African American Voters Registration Education Committee, and we get out and walk and we do the voting thing and we're into all that spirited momentum. But my question directly is about the neighborhood associations, how we can connect ACGG with an effort. I'm going to be visiting all the neighborhood associations, but I want to come with an introduction, so to speak, that connects them to an overall. So would it be proper or appropriate, along with the local area that's working, educating on about the Constitution and other things about voting and other things, would it be appropriate to bring in someone from ACGG through our neighborhood associations? Now we have our interfaith group as well, which is another entity that I'm going to ask you to come and speak, either of you, or all 3 of you, but ACGG.
That's right. Yeah, I think it's very appropriate, Sister Martha, and thank you for the question, because we are, nonpartisan organization, concerned really about civic engagement, civic education, and economic dignity. That's the 3rd element. And that applies to neighborhood associations. One of the most effective groups we have in Winston-Salem are neighborhood associations. We even have a township of neighborhood associations. One group that I work with, Greenway Neighborhood Association, we were able to get a pool of money from the major banks to establish a locally controlled neighborhood association housing development program, meaning this: instead of people selling their houses that needed windows replaced or roof repaired or some foundational work, we provided 1% loans to them to do that work to keep their house. It worked very well for about 5 years. And then the industry changed a little bit about having, community activity on the level they were having it then. But that's a very important element in every city, to have a progressive neighborhood association. You get a lot of things from that, including, watch groups, neighborhood watch groups, et cetera. And the organizational pattern from there is very, very important for the community improvement. So by all means, I would invite them to go to the website, look at the website, see if it's something relevant they can identify with, invite one of the officers to participate with you. Imam Talib Sharif is the vice president. I'm the president. Brother Mustafa Shabazz is the treasurer. You always have this theme, if she's available to talk about these issues, Even though she calls herself no officer, she's well informed about these matters. Sister Ronnie, Brother Judge David Shaheed out of Indiana, he's out of the country right now. Brother Jimmy Small, who works with the Muslim League of Voters, they're very much engaged in their 40th anniversary celebration this year, but they're very, very organized as well. So any of those people that I just mentioned, the other ones in the New York area, sort of the southern part of the country, would be very good to participate. And you can always call your brother. Just let me know a couple of days in advance so I can make sure, I can make it. Inshallah.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Inshallah. Okay. Thank you so very much. I'll go and do my footwork. I have the list from the city.
Yes, ma'am. You're breaking up for some reason. The audio is not clear. It's going in and out, Sister Martha.
All the neighborhood association. I'm done. I'm saying assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you again for your question.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? It's about 2:55 or 2:56. I know we're approaching the 3 o'clock hour pretty quickly here, so let's give at least two other people an opportunity to make a comment. If not, we'll turn it over to our other co-hosts and let them make their comments before we close out our session for today.
Brother Sharif awfully quiet today.
That's unusual. But maybe our brother's in a reflective mode today. Well, this is your homework assignment for next week. What's the relationship between the Medina Charter and the Bill of Rights? What is the relationship between the Medina Charter, Prophet Muhammad signed by the peace of Allah always be with him and his family, and what we call today the Bill of Rights? What is that connection? Oh, is there a connection between the Medina Charter? There are about 47 articles in there, depending on which one you're reading. And if you're reading the Arabic or the translation, some say there are 52, some say 47. Regardless, if you ever get a chance to go through those articles and see how many of them are related to our quote, Bill of Rights today. There are some, I'll give you a hint. I won't say everything, but hint, hint, hint. Do the research. Come back next week in time. You either get an A or another A or no support. No, do your homework. You'll benefit just from doing the reading yourselves, inshallah. Just to know there's connection between those documents for your own enrichment, inshallah. All right. Well, hosts have anything they'd like to add to our discussion before we wrap it up for this Monday morning, September. Lord have mercy. September 8th, 2025.
Before we close it out, I do have this since we're talking about ethics so much today. I will say there's a Native American saying that, I love to give you guys something to put on your mind, especially from mi abuela. I will tell you that I just remember always hearing this saying that it is less of a problem to be poor than to be dishonest.
Mm. Mm.
And I'll leave you with that.
Wow. I don't know if we have enough time. What do we have? 2 minutes? I'm going to say this very quickly. I'm going to try to do it in 5 seconds. Allah has blessed me to travel overseas quite a bit, right? I was in Benin, West Africa, and went to a small community to say prayer because I heard they're dying. So I get into this little small village. Brothers and sisters, they had one little cup of water that they would pass around in a circle. That's all they had. And everybody in there put one finger in and did the ablution to the best of their ability. Very poor community. But they shared what they had with love. Now, I remember Benin is, colonized as a French-speaking country. So fortunately, I speak a little French. But those people were concerned about me. Did I have something to eat? The whole 9 yards, was I visiting, etc. The next day, I went to another place. I saw these minarets up on this hill, like a fantastic place to go to. I went up there. When I walked in, the people looked at me like I was a stranger of strangers. No reception, no inquiry, like I didn't belong. You know, it's the feeling you get is more important than the knowledge you get sometimes. It was ice cold, and this masjid had all the remnants of modernity, marble floors, 4 minarets, all the carpet you can imagine, but ice cold human nature from my experience. I never went back. I'm saying it to say that your character speaks volumes about you, and sometimes it rings loud in those that have the little instead of those that have a lot. That experience made that very clear to me. And it just reminded me of my grandmother who said, listen, have don't always last, and have not don't always last. Have don't always last, and have not. So keep your balance in life. Don't get too far extreme on either one of those elements because things will change if you live long enough. I guarantee it. But I want to thank everyone for participating today. I think we've had a lively discussion. I think your first moral lesson comes from Mama. Boy, didn't I say you to clean yourself? I'm tired of telling you to clean yourself. Wash your teeth. Wash your face. Make that bed up. you know. And after a while, she gets tired of you telling you all the time you may have a consequence. But your first moral food comes from Mama. Now, Mama has many different metaphors there, but that's your foundation that you get. And they say, on the foot of civilization starts at the foot of a mother, basically. And that's our first moral teacher, inshallah. Don't take that literally, but it has a lot of meaning to it. Mother represents a lot of different characters in the metaphor, also that physical mother as well. But again, thank you for joining us on MAP5 here on September the 8th already, 2025. We thank you for every question, every ear to listen. And keep in mind this, Allah's given us 2 ears and 1 mouth on every human being. Let's try to listen twice as much as we talk. There's a lesson in that also. Inshallah, we'll close out with this English prayer, if you don't mind. Then we're going to let our sister close out the way that she usually does. The English prayer goes like this. It's the very last surah in the Holy Quran. It says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I seek refuge in the Lord and cherish of mankind, the King and ruler of mankind, the Allah, judge of mankind, from the evil whisperer, the same who whispers into the hearts among men and jinn, then withdraws after this whisper, I mean. Right, our sister who always closes us out with a saying. Sister Cheryl, it's on you.
Change what you want and you'll change how you act. The words of mi abuela. And stay prayerful, stay powerful, stay philanthropic, stay political, and stay engaged. Inshallah, we'll see you back here next week. Same channel, same energy, same engagement, same time. 12 o'clock Central, 1 o'clock on the East Coast. Yeah, no, the right coast, and they would be on the that coast. And then 10 o'clock on the best coast, the West Coast. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Do something today for someone without the expectation for anything in return. No kudos. Don't post it on the internet. Don't expect a clap on the back or some spotlight. Just do it because it's the right thing to do. And you will get your blessings in a different way. So have a wonderful, wonderful Monday and an even better week. Assalamu alaikum. And with that,
Alaikum assalam.
and we tell you, and with that, we tell you,
it's a wrap.
It's a wrap. Oh, okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
Peace out. Peace out.